Hi, Mickey. Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I went to a extremely star-studded Hollywood party last night.
Really?
Really?
Who was there?
Hundreds of people. Let's see. David Duchovny, the director Robert Rodriguez, and his girlfriend, who I assume was Rose McGowan.
I know somebody who dated David Duchovny, by the way.
Very cool. Matt Greening.
Oh, you know what? I once found myself in his presence.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
But what?
I failed to say anything intelligent.
You did?
Yeah.
He's he reads Slate. What can I say? Anyway, but you know who else I ran into, Bob?
No.
Somebody who, in your mind, eclipses all these stars.
Well, it's not me. It couldn't have been me. I would remember that. Who was it?
Jill Sobule.
Really?
Looking very glamorous. You know how on that video you showed me, she looked sort of folky and messed up with like her unruly hair. She looked like a movie star last night.
Did you talk to her?
I talked to her. I gave her my card.
You're on your way, buddy. Chicks love that.
I told her that you like Mexican wrestler.
Great.
And she said, Mexican wrestler, huh? And I don't know if that means, like, why can't he like some of my more recent work? Or, gee, that's nice that he likes Mexican wrestler.
Did you say he's this guy that you had 5 minutes of FaceTime with at a concert recently?
Yeah, I tried to work all that in.
But she didn't get it? She didn't make the connection? I had not made a lasting impression on her?
No, but if she responds to my card and sends me an email, I'll fill her in.
But I'm nobody to her right now, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, well, we'll just see if she shows up on Blogging Heads TV anytime soon, okay? I'm not betting on it.
She was very flattered. She was happy.
Okay, maybe then, maybe.
And I went and saw the song, and it's a good song.
It's a great song.
It's funny, it's heartbreaking.
Exactly. Rare combination.
I agree. And there are also like songs of, if you go on YouTube, there are also other people sort of singing the same song, imitating her.
Meanwhile, my wife went to a Regina Spektor concert only night before last.
That's very exciting.
She's so youthful.
Shouldn't she be like a big star now beyond your wife?
Well, I mean, she didn't hang out with my wife.
Yeah.
Although my wife talked to her parents and said exactly the thing that would make an impression on parents. You know what that is? I mean, suppose you're the parents of somebody who's becoming a rock star. And there's some things you've heard a lot, and there's some things, what would really make an impression?
Your daughter convinced my children not to go on drugs.
Actually, I'm afraid that the lyrics would have the opposite effect. But what she said was, she has stayed so nice and sweet, even as she's gotten more and more famous. You must have done something right. That's exactly the kind of thing. They will remember that comment forever.
I think that means she's not famous enough.
That would have been the wrong spin to put on it, and with that audience, I think. Okay.
Well, good. So this is our brush with fame segment.
Yeah, it only grows. Now I wanted to rip a couple of things from today's headlines.
Sure.
Okay, one is from the Washington Post website this morning. Mukasey, that is the Attorney General designate, right? Mm-hmm. Mukasey, this is in his testimony. Mukasey vows allegiance to law. Now,
there you go.
Well, there was a time in American history when it wouldn't have made headlines for the Attorney General designate to say he's going to abide by the law, because after all, he's in charge of enforcing it. I'm just saying we're at a time in history where this is like a man bites dog story, apparently.
I assume they mean he's not going to follow signing statements and he's not going to rely on inherent executive authority.
Actually, I think the context was more like, suppose Bush does what he does with your predecessor and kind of like encourage him to basically disregard like actual laws. But I don't know. It just struck me as ironic, a kind of funny headline. Mukasey vows allegiance to law. Yeah, like, head of Postal Service vows to try to deliver mail.
It just seems like it's a bad headline, but I'm glad I missed those hearings.
Now here's a headline from...
I must admit, the left, and especially the left of Slate, is obsessed with this Justice Department stuff and FISA. It seems to me all out of proportion. It's important stuff, but it's not like It's just they're totally obsessed by it. But I guess I should.
Well, you got to be obsessed, because then when the next terrorist attack hits, everybody's going to kind of fold on this issue, and there have to be some fanatics out there, and it's good that people have taken these public stands for civil liberties, because then they'll find it harder to back down. So I'm happy about the obsession.
Okay.
Now another headline ripped from the BBC website from like yesterday, I think. Gore rules out presidential bid. Now, Mickey.
I read that story.
It's an example of non-liberal media bias.
How is it non-liberal? It's an example of British media bias.
Okay, British, but the point is the nature of the bias is not a liberal bias. Even if you may think the BBC is liberal, the story is just wrong.
Right.
Gore did not rule out presidential bid. What he said
what
was
did he say?
It was a standard non-denial denial. I don't have plans to be a candidate again, so I don't really see it in that context at all.
It's just the Brits don't understand that I have no plans doesn't mean I won't run.
Well, actually, it was misleadingly billed on the Wall Street Journal homepage, too. What happened was an Associated Press reporter tried to get exegetical and split hairs and contend that this was slightly different from the last thing he had said. And the story per se wasn't wrong. It was a little overblown. It wasn't wrong, but then some headline writers took it a step further. But anyway, I think Gore is clearly still wants to be, wants to think about it, and I have a scenario.
What's your scenario? Because my people say it's highly unlikely.
It may be, but I have a scenario whereby he could be catapulted to the presidency.
I don't believe it, so let's have it.
You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, right now, the problem he has getting in the race is stepping on Obama's toes in particular, and Edwards's as well to some extent, right? Because his progressive constituency, these are the heroes, one or the other is, of his progressive constituency, right? So that would be pretty awkward, right?
I don't think that's the major awkwardness, but yes.
But it is an awkwardness. Now,
it's an awkwardness.
Ironically, according to the conventional wisdom at least, both of those guys are almost out of it, right? I mean, the conventional wisdom is they better start making inroads really soon, or Hillary is just going to steamroll them, right? And the fact is, judging by the races they've run and where they stand, I think there's very little chance that either one of them, gets the nomination, right? Edwards and Obama?
Right. Okay, I'm going along just to hear your scenario.
Okay, so here's, if you accept that premise, those two premises.
Yeah.
Here's the brilliant little stratagem that would work. Obama says, look, I finally realized it's true I need a little more seasoning. I didn't have quite enough experience. I'm young. Who knows? And I called Al Gore and said, look, I just because I can't hold up the progressive flag, I really want somebody who can win to do it, and I really think you should run. And Al Gore said to me, if I run, I want you on my ticket as my vice president. And then they go through the primaries as a ticket.
Right.
What happens? They win, right?
See, I'm not sure they win.
They probably win.
I'm even not sure. The complicating factor doesn't seem to me that Obama has been so successful because he hasn't.
No, I know. That's the irony. But he hasn't been so unsuccessful that Gore can enter.
Right. No, I think that's right. But the complicating factor is that Gore and Hillary hate each other, and it would be too humiliating for Gore to lose to Hillary. But see, the Nobel Prize really cuts the downside of losing for Gore, I maintain. I mean, why? He's riding high. He has nowhere to go but down, and that would put him down.
No, but he's also got that to fall back on. His place in history is now secure. I mean, it wasn't just losing. It's not just losing to Hillary. It was also, the problem was also, hey, as it stands, you're known as the person who won a presidential election and should have been president. Whereas now if you go and lose an election, it changes all that.
Right. That's still true.
It's still true, but I think the Nobel Prize, it gives him something to fall back on. It also becomes part of the spin if he wants to run a very high-minded race, I'm the Nobel laureate, I don't have to get down in the gutter.
I think you're wildly overestimating the value of a Nobel Prize.
No, I'm not putting any stock in that at all.
I mean, what about Rigoberto Menchú? Huh?
Beg your pardon?
Isn't she a Guatemalan activist who wrote a biography filled with lies who won the Nobel Prize?
Possible.
Yeah, anyway.
Sounds like the kind of name such a person would have.
Anyway, the point is it didn't. The point is that the Nobel Prize has been politicized and devalued, and it's just not that big a deal anymore.
Well, yeah, that's true of everything. That's true of the presidency. I mean, but so I think,
right.
Relatively speaking, nothing's changed, right?
Right. It's interesting. First, I question one of your premises, which is that Gore would be that progressive. And there was a Dick Morris article about how Gore could beat Hillary, and it basically made the same point, that the progressive wing of the party is up for grabs, especially on Iraq, where Hillary refuses to commit to taking troops out. But do you really think Gore's going to commit to taking troops out? I mean, Gore's still a buddy with Marty Peretz. I mean, he still has these neocon ties.
Well, that's the irony. Well, he has one neocon tie.
Well, he has a bunch of them.
Yeah, well, was it Leon Firth? Was that his foreign policy advisor?
Yes.
What was his ideological stripe? That would be a clue.
I think he was against the Iraq War.
Was he?
I think so. It'd be interesting to go back.
Well,
and
I
check.
maintain that Gore's whole psychological state in the wake of 2000 makes him kind of the anti-Bush by nature, and that's exactly what we need, is the anti-Bush.
Well, I sort of think Hillary's the anti-Bush too. He's cautious. She's cautious. She's not reckless. She's not going to do anything too far outside the conventional wisdom envelope.
No,
and it seems to me that's what people are in the mood for.
She's way better than anything the Republicans are going to cough up, for my money. But the fear is...
How is Gore more cautious than Hillary? Hillary's the most cautious person in the world.
Well, no, but the fear is that because she's a woman, she's going to be forced to prove her manhood. She's certainly talking like that on foreign policy. She's certainly sounding to the right of other people on foreign policy.
I just think Gore thinks he's a responsible steward, and he's not going to make an irresponsible promise like having our troops out of Iraq by 2013.
Well, he may not. That, to me, is not that big a deal. That's not the issue.
Well, what is the issue? How else does he distinguish himself from Hillary?
Well, electability, for one thing, I think.
Well, it's weird. I always thought that Gore was not... Gore's polls were really pretty bad.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not like, Colin Powell, who when you polled him, 60% of people wanted to vote for him for president. But there's a Mark Blumenthal page on Pollster.com with the polls on Gore, and they're not as bad as I thought. They're about the same as Hillary.
Yeah.
His favorabilities are a little worse than Hillary's, if you can believe that. But among Democratic voters, he's still highly well thought of. I don't see him having a huge advantage, but I thought he was, at a big disadvantage, and I was wrong about that, according to this Mark Blumenthal page, which I will link to.
Yeah. I mean, I think just in general, on the left... in the netroots and so on, there's a lot of people who would like somebody other than Hillary. They're currently divided between Edwards and Obama. At the same time, of course, Hillary's success has called into doubt how much the netroots matters. That's a story some people are spinning.
Well, and the netroots aren't hating on Hillary nearly as much as I thought they would.
No, not like they used to. She's won them over a little bit, and without seeming to pander to them, I think.
Well, it's just all that they ultimately they really care about winning, and they don't regard a Hillary victory as a loss somehow. So I don't know. I just didn't buy that Dick Morris.
Well, you sent me the link. I was reading it, and I thought, this guy, maybe he's right. He's got a pretty good record as a prognosticator. But then I looked down in his bio, and it said, what was the... I've got it here somewhere. It said Dick Morris is the author of Condi versus Hillary, the next great presidential race. He didn't get that one exactly right.
He's been churning out a book every 4 or 5 weeks. You know who Dick Morris is,
Hey,
right?
he offered to blurb one of my books. He called me.
Right. Okay, you do. Okay.
Yeah, because he's a Teilhard de Chardin fan. He called me about Nonzero, offered a blurb. Dick Morris blurb.
And you knew from that conversation that he's really, really smart. But he has a terrible record as a prognosticator. He predicted Rick Lazio would beat Hillary. He really doesn't like Hillary, and so I think that distorts his perception. And he also is trying to promote himself in his book. So I didn't quite. He made an elementary mistake, of the sort that I fell into. He said, "Well, Gore can skip Iowa and New Hampshire and go right to Michigan and Florida, except that Michigan and Florida, the primaries aren't going to count." So it could continue the Gore tradition of getting the most votes and not having it count. But I don't think that's what he wants to do. It seemed like a weak column.
Yeah.
And he also said Hillary had no policy impact in the Clinton administration after her health care debacle. That has to be an exaggeration. I'm sure her role was badly diminished, but.
By the way, I noticed you cast doubt on Paul Starr's claim that the health care fiasco was less Hillary's doing than is thought and more Bill's, right?
Well, if you put it that way, I'm sure everybody thinks it was totally Hillary's fault, so it was probably more Bill's fault than that. But it was still largely, in a good chunk of it was Hillary's fault.
But you realize Paul Starr was like there, right? You remember that,
right? But now he's writing a piece that sort of just accidentally seems to dovetail with what the Hillary people would want him to write. And he's not as bad as Bob Kuttner, who, when Clinton took office, delivered the single most nauseating suck-up paragraph I've ever read about what a wonderful guy Hillary is. I mean,
I wouldn't call that sucking up. If you tell Hillary she's a wonderful guy, I don't think so.
No, this is to Bill at Bill's economic summit after he got elected.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood.
But, Paul Starr's piece is a very good piece, and it makes the best case. It's just not very convincing. I mean, Bill was formally in charge of the health care group. Yes, Bill had settled on what basically he wanted to do, before Hillary's task force was convened. Yes, Hillary's task force was sort of disbanded and Bill took charge. Yes, but all the political, it was still Hillary's issue, and all the political misjudgments of that year are arguably laid at the feet of Hillary. And in Sally Bedell Smith's new book, there's a section where he describes how Bill sort of starts to compromise on universal health care, and Hillary chews him out. It seemed clear to everybody at the time, and Paul Starr does not contradict this, that the reluctance to compromise when obviously they should have compromised or they should have put it on the shelf and done welfare reform first was Hillary's ego. And that's what you got to combat, and Hillary arguing behind the scenes, and the piece doesn't do anything to dispel that notion. It just says, well, Bill was formally in charge. Well, so, yeah.
But we digress.
But I like that digression.
I know you did. I was not prepared. I didn't know we were going to talk about health care. So I know.
You let me get in a cheap shot at Bob Kuttner.
I know you always welcome that.
Yeah.
We should, you should have a little dialogue with Bob Kuttner.
Maybe Bob Kuttner and Ezra Klein at the same time.
At the same time. We can do that technologically.
Their
faces will be really, really small, but we can do it.
Really? You can have tripartite threesomes?
In theory.
Okay.
Now.
Okay.
This Edwards, the Edwards rumors that you are doing your best to fan.
I think the word is pimp.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I have been fanning those rumors.
Yeah.
And now I'm sort of having second thoughts for reasons we'll get to. But.
And these are rumors of some sort of extramarital dalliance, and you took them. They'd only appeared in this one, admittedly highly credible source, the National Enquirer, Mickey. When you jumped on them and tried to fan the flames. Now, coincidentally, another story surfaced at about this same time. And although, granted, I realize, you can't trust everything that's on the internet, but it did appear in the esteemed liberal blog Atrios, right?
Well, Bob, first, I've heard these rumors about Edwards for months and months and months, and I've been pushing them even before the National Enquirer story. Huffington Post started this by noticing that the webisodes that this attractive female woman filmmaker made of Edwards, where she flirts with him, were suddenly banished from his website, and they would only let reporters watch them under armed guard or something. It was absurd. And so, what gives? Why did they decide to ban these webisodes? Obviously, the suspicion was that he was having an affair with her, and you've heard rumors that she's told friends that she was having an affair, which she now denies. Then the Enquirer story come out, and they claim they have emails. Well, the Enquirer's not always to be believed, but when they say they have concrete evidence, they're sometimes right, and you don't just dismiss them out of hand. So I would think this is a legitimate story. I mean, it's he's gone on national TV with his wife and talked about how he's devoted to her and she has cancer and you should judge a presidential candidate by the character that they show, and if his devotion to his wife involves having an affair, if that is true, wouldn't you think that reflects badly on him?
Mickey, I was just starting to relay what Atrios had reported, and you kind of changed the subject there. Do you want me not to get to this or something?
I wanted to give viewers the predicate for the story. It seems to me it's a story worth following up.
Okay, right, fine.
And it's more than the average just politician fools around on his wife. It's a politician who's been capitalizing on his loyalty to his wife, fooling around on his wife, which is it seems to me, if true, is a legitimate story.
Well, we can argue about that in a second, but first I did just want to relay that Atrios reported that you have had sex with a goat. And I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but oral sex?
Bob, that's so, that's just so scummy and so upsetting. I mean, you know me, Bob, and you know there's nobody in my life except for Sally, and Sally's a moose. And how do you think Sally feels?
Are you showing your moose on the air now?
How do you think Sally feels, when these stories that I'm cheating on her with a goat come out? I mean, people should have some elementary consideration, I think, for before they disrupt somebody's private life like that. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of between you and Atrios, but well, I guess I won't quote from the story itself. He was actually making a serious point, kind of satirizing the way you took something in the and he did report this, by the way.
It was a bogus point. If I have sex with goats and the goats send emails to people, then he has a legitimate parallel. The National Enquirer has emails.
So that's
from
why
this
you chose
person.
Goats, because they just don't do email, right? That was very clever. Even in the age of transparency, that will not come to light.
That's why the choice of goats is so brilliant on my part,
yeah.
Bob.
I would confine
they
it
don't have access to advanced electronic communication.
Yeah, good thinking.
But it's just not true that it's just somebody made a charge and somebody didn't deny it. It's that there's a lot of evidence that somebody's going around giving concrete evidence to people that she's having an affair. Now, maybe she's not telling the truth. That's always possible. I don't know that it's true, but it just seems to me it's worth checking out. When Atrius comes up with an email from one of these goats, then he'll have a point.
Well, we will link to the Atrios piece and let our viewers judge for themselves. Now, the other person who jumped on your case for this was Matt Iglesias, and you kind of, perhaps a little snarkily, contrasted your approach to journalism with his by saying by kind of saying implicitly that your approach can, quote, contribute to the search for the truth, as opposed to being admissible in court or on Matt Iglesias' blog. In other words, his standards of evidence are too high. But do you really think, though, when you're like recycling these, whether you want to call them rumors or reports about extramarital affairs, I mean, search for the truth is not maybe slightly too noble sounding?
I'm not. First, no. There's an attitude among the blogosphere, especially with this story, which is There's these formalities that you have to go through to make a story somehow legitimate that don't really have that much to do with truth. For example, hearsay evidence. Okay, hearsay evidence isn't admissible in court for all sorts of reasons, only some of which have to do with its reliability. Others have to do with you have to give the opposite side the right to confront and cross-examine, and so they don't let hearsay evidence in. But hearsay evidence is perfectly relevant to the truth if you discount for the lack of credibility. So I say we should use hearsay evidence when we're looking for the truth. But the Iglesias of the world sort of say, oh, well, it's just hearsay, or oh, it's just the National Enquirer. Well, the National Enquirer is some evidence. It's not conclusive evidence. It's some evidence. If you were concerned about the truth, you'd say, yeah, let's check it out.
Now, as for the question of whether an extramarital affair is really something for you to spend a lot of time looking into as a journalist, what's your position on that? Why is it we need to know? I'm not necessarily skeptical, but
it's because of what Edwards himself says. It reflects on the character of the person who's in the White House. And if you think Edwards is a phony, and it turns out that his behavior for his toward his wife has a large element of phoniness in it, that's relevant. I think Edwards, has an element of phoniness, and I think that'll come back to hurt him. And this is a fairly.
But is this really related to the phony? I mean, I don't know. I personally take a kind of a conservative view on these things and think it's kind of semi-legit, but I'm kind of surprised that you do. I guess is what I mean. This doesn't seem so consistent with your general set of values.
I've always believed that sex is relevant to the character issue. I mean, 20 years from now, somebody at Yale will get tenure writing about how George Bush's repressed sexuality led him to invade Iraq. Well, why can't we know that now? It seems to me it's all relevant, and the reasons why we rope off sex have nothing to do with its relevance. They have to do with the rights to privacy, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
I do think people are reluctant to report about Edwards for an idiosyncratic reason, and I feel the same way, which is his wife. His wife is very sick, and the fear is if he drops out of his race, what's his wife going to do? Sit at home all day? That can't be good for her health. So I think there's a special concern there.
I doubt many people are thinking it through like that. I think people are reluctant to go into the personal lives in general, really.
I think people think it through in that they love Elizabeth Edwards and she's sick, and why do we want to do this?
It could be a little of that, but
too horrible to contemplate.
Well, yeah, but it would just be because how much of this would hurt her, not because how much it would hurt her for him not to win the presidency or something, I think. But anyway.
Well, they're both. It removes her reason for going on.
Yeah. Now, and I guess if I point out that this is a Democrat you're focusing on, you'll be able to reach into the historical record and show us that you once dredged up rumors like this about a Republican. This is a softball, Mickey. I'm sure you have.
I did fan the Bush cocaine rumors.
Wow. Who didn't? That's pathetic. That's the only thing you've got?
I think that's the only thing I got.
That's not very good.
Who else were you thinking of? Giuliani?
Well, first of all, Bush's father is known to have... We even know the name of the woman, right? Jennifer, what was it?
We know the name of the woman. It was rumored to be, but would I have? It's a good question. At the time, was I, as opposed to Joe Coniston, fanning these rumors? And I guess I wasn't.
Your defense should be I didn't have a blog, and that should be your defense.
I was at Newsweek at the time. I think I actually did try to fan the rumors.
And I remember you were like festive about the Monica revelations, man.
I think that's true. I started a whole blog to talk about Monica.
So let the record show you are unable to squelch the accusation that basically you look for dirt on Democrats and not on Republicans.
I think at Newsweek I may have tried to publicize the Jennifer Flowers rumor. The problem is that there's not so much you can do at Newsweek. I mean,
the Jennifer Flowers? Right. Of course you would.
Not the Jennifer Flowers.
What was her name? Fitzgerald or something?
Fitzgerald. But the problem is that George Bush's son, George W. Bush, came to Newsweek and said, the word on the big A is N-O. On the word on adultery is N-O. And after that, it sort of stopped the extent to which you could speculate about it in Newsweek, certainly. But
Wait, what happened? What happened? The son came and said that during the presidency of the father?
The current President Bush appointed himself as his father's enforcer during that campaign.
Yeah.
88. And he went to the editors of Newsweek and told, when these rumors of his father's affair started, said the word on the big A is N-O.
What, like he commanded them not to pursue it and they complied?
He was quoting his father, and for some reason that denial had the effect of stopping the reporting on it, yes.
That's weird. Why would a serious journalist accept the word of the son on something like that?
Was the son quoting the father, apparently.
This is bizarre.
I thought it was weird.
And of course, similarly, you're accepting Edwards' denials, right?
No, I'm not.
I know. That was I meant to say that in an ironic vein.
I thought it was weird that Newsweek accepted Bush's denials, and I don't accept Edwards' denials.
Non-liberal media bias, man. It's rampant.
Well, there you go.
So are we going to talk about something
I'm
substantive,
guilty.
or should we just...
Talk about what?
Something substantive. You wanted to, what? You wanted to
okay.
gloat about Iraq or something?
Well, there was this, now that we're making fun of headlines, there was this incredible headline in the McClatchy papers. As violence falls in Iraq, cemetery workers feel the pinch. Now that's not a headline in The Onion. It's an actual headline in a respectable American paper. And the point is that there's now too much evidence that violence is falling to deny it. Now, maybe that doesn't lead to a long-term solution, but violence is falling. And you would think that Al-Qaeda or our opponents who are not Al-Qaeda would have tried to stage some sort of dramatic display of violence to counter the perception that the surge is having a positive effect. And they seem to have been unable to. And my point is, people at one point accused Malcolm Gladwell of starting the war by promoting the concept of a tipping point, that we're always seeing a tipping point around the corner, that things are suddenly going to go our way. Mm-hmm. But the tipping point phenomena is a real phenomena, and we might be at a stage where sort of, an end to violence gathers steam, where more and more Al-Qaeda people are turned in, and people see the tide going our way, so they turn in more people, and, people then in the Shiite areas turn against the Shiite extremists, and something quite good happens. And we shouldn't give up while there's still the possibility of that tipping point. Not that we've hit it, not that it's going to make the war worthwhile, Bob. I know you had a great rant on that last week.
Well, you were on the verge of, you seemed to be veering toward that line last week. You were kind of semi-embracing that line last week.
I don't think I was, but your rant was very impressive.
Thank you.
And succinct. And heartfelt.
Thank you.
But I don't think I would say that the Iraq War was ultimately a good thing. I thought I was saying that, I think it can be reduced on a scale of failure to a 6, and you said from a 10 to a 9, with 10 being absolute failure.
10 being the apocalypse.
10 being apocalypse?
Yeah.
I just think
not a 10. It's a 9. Could go down to 8. That's rock bottom. Look, wars wind down. We've already been in this one longer than we were in World War II. So, it's about time. Could happen. Could wind down within a year or two. And you see signs. That Al-Qaeda in Iraq is being kind of squeezed out. And now I do think that a minority of this is due to the surge per se, but could happen, and it's good. Al-Qaeda in Iraq is the one group that has an interest in just mayhem per se, almost independent of any other near-term goal. So if you get them out of the equation, you can imagine it stabilizing kind of on both sides, Sunni, Shiite, and then the trick is just avoiding the civil war part, or subduing the civil war part. It's not totally undoable. You'll have to accept a role, I think, for Iran in bringing the stability on the Shiite side, and the administration seems reluctant to do that. They're complaining lately because the Iraqi government is letting Iran provide electricity to Sadr City or something, or wants to do some kind of deal. Well, you're just going to have to live with that. First of all, if you can't let the Iraqi government make decisions like that, it is hopeless. We can't manage the place for the next decade. And secondly, we've been unable to provide electricity, so we're just going to have to live. One of the costs of the war is to expand Iranian influence and live with it.
I have a couple of questions. So I've given up even understanding what's going on there. There was tremendous opposition to this Senate resolution in favor of soft partition among Iraqis. That seemed bizarre to me, since I thought Iraqis were riven by sectarianism.
Is it really verified in a rigorous way that that's the case? I heard anecdotally that was the case.
Well, the Parliament condemned it, and there are polls that are now a little old showing that people in Iraq oppose it. And I just read a recent story where it interviewed an American commanding officer in one of the provinces in the Triangle. I don't know.
Well, of course, the Parliament consists of people who have an interest in, they are the central government, and a resolution basically saying so long central government is not going to win favor in the parliament.
But this army commander said that the people on the ground didn't want it either.
Okay.
But yet, one of the two big Shiite groups, the one that's not the Mahdi army, the Skiri, I think it's called, is pursuing a decentralization, including an Anbar, that is a sort of soft partition. So, even though it's unpopular, the most popular Shiite group is pursuing it, and it's opposed by Sadr, and Sadr, according to Juan Cole, pursues a pan-Islamicist agenda. Now, is Sadr's agenda pan-Islamicist or Iraqi nationalist? That's what I don't understand. If it's pan-Islamicist, it could embrace Iran. If it's Iraqi nationalist, it's in opposition to Iran.
Well, he had posed as pan-sectarian traditionally, at least.
Right, I know that, but is it pan-sectarian in the names of a unified Iraq, or pan-sectarian in the unified Arab Iraq, or pan-sectarian in the name of a some sort of Muslim larger
you got
Muslim
me, man.
Umbrella.
Yeah. I do not pretend to understand it. But there were a couple of other stories that kind of got my attention related to Iraq and related to the contention that this was a disaster regardless of what happens next. One was this story about in the New York Times about this guy in America, 21-year-old, who from his parents' home runs a website that basically uses Al-Qaeda propaganda and converts it to makes it consumable for an American audience and uses the video and everything. Did you see this about?
No, I didn't.
One thing, it quoted Zarqawi, remember, the now dead head of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, or it said this about him. A Palestinian militant, said he made the decision that every group should have a video camera with them and every operation should be taped. And it just underscores, he understood what a great background for propaganda the Iraq War had created, and they obviously made the most of it, and the results are still coming out. The other thing is this Turkey thing. The Turkey's parliament voted yesterday or today to authorize basically an invasion of the Kurdish part of Iraq,
Right.
And they're not going to do it anytime soon, but it does point to some of the paradoxes that will live long after this war winds down, if it ever does. For example, Bush is still determined to have a long-term American troop presence, I'm sure. If you ask where can we know that these troops would be welcome, the one place is Kurdistan, right?
Right.
And now, meanwhile, partly emboldened by the current status of Kurdistan after the invasion, these Kurdish rebels are making incursions into Turkey because they want to establish a larger Kurdistan. Now, if we have troops in Kurdistan and war breaks out between Kurdistan and Turkey, we will be compelled by, as I understand the structure of NATO, the whole idea is that an attack on any member is an attack on all. Turkey is a member. So we would be basically compelled to attack Kurdistan, and of course, conveniently, we would already be there. There's that, some sort of saving in fuel costs or something. But then on the other hand, to the extent that we were there as a force, an allied force with Kurdistan, which we would be, I guess, it would in a certain sense us be attacking NATO or supporting an attack of NATO. So I don't know. You figure it out. But
well, I thought the point you were going to make is, the reason why I opposed the war weekly at the last minute was a legalistic reason, which is we shouldn't engage in transborder aggression, transborder war, at least, maybe not aggression, transborder war, without UN authorization, and clearly we had not gotten UN authorization. Now we're in the position of trying to urge Turkey not to engage in a transborder war, and we've lost our legal and moral authority. Because, we saw a threat, and we went in and overthrew Saddam, and so if Turkey sees a threat, why shouldn't it cross the border and do what it
Well, but there's a difference. With Turkey, there is a threat. They are being attacked from within the borders of Kurdish Iraq. That was not happening with us. So actually, they got a pretty good case.
Well, we were being attacked by Saddam. He was shooting at our planes and stuff like that. That was
not at the time we attacked.
Well, it seems to me they were both threats, but there was a legal inhibition there that we have now thrown away.
Also, there is a. Well, no. Anyway, he was not doing that when we attacked, and there is a little bit of a difference anyway between shooting at planes that are flying in your airspace and like actually crossing a border and attacking somebody.
I can't believe you're not agreeing with me, Bob. It's.
No, look, it did undermine our moral authority. Totally, that was a big argument of mine. But I'm just saying, we have created a situation by kind of abetting this Kurdish aggression. That could unfold along a wholly different, dire dimension.
Right.
And Turkey, remember, is you would think a cherished ally of ours because it's a Muslim state that's trying hard to be modern and it's in its sensibility and trying hard to be secular. And here we are. Suddenly, we're going to be kind of apparently on the side of a bunch of people who are kind of like invading Turkey. That's Bob, bad, and that's another byproduct of this war.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi, who chose this month to outrage Turkey by pushing this Armenian genocide resolution insanely at the one point where Turkey could really do us damage. What was she thinking? How irresponsible was that?
I think somebody was thinking about how many Armenian Americans they had in their district. What didn't the resolution begin with some congressman who has a lot of Armenians?
Adam Schiff. It's possible, but Pelosi is supposed to be the speaker for the whole nation, not the speaker for her district.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the other thing.
Even Jim Fallows has weighed in against her.
Oh, has he?
Well, against the resolution.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's my instinct, too. I mean, you're always reluctant to criticize somebody who's trying to basically clarify a country's historical memory about some major crime they committed, but there's enough realist in me to wish that they hadn't done that, yeah. And
would you label what happened to the Armenians genocide?
Well, see, that's the other thing. I don't know the facts of the case. I gather, what is the span of respectable disagreement? Nobody denies that a whole bunch of people died, right? And I guess some people depict it as something more like a kind of Bataan death march / ethnic cleansing thing where...
I think that's right.
Where you're just trying to get them out of there, and if you have to kill them to convince them, you will. And then other people depict it as a more systematic slaughter.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But I suspect the definition of genocide has been watered down so much that it's
been watered down tremendously. The legal definition is absurd when you look at it. It's the destruction of an ethnic group in whole or in part. That's it. Now, I'm sure there's a body of interpretation, but if you just look at what that says, it says that if you kill any human being, you have committed genocide. Because anyone you kill will be a part of an ethnic group.
It's weird. I talk to human rights activists and say, look, haven't you watered genocide down so much that we have an excuse of stopping genocide anywhere we want to invade? We'll say there's genocide going on. And they say, oh, that's not a problem, blah, blah, blah. But it seems to me it is a problem.
Well, look, it helped get us into the Iraq War. Yeah. There's a serious argument. I mean, there's no doubt, I think, that Saddam Hussein killed tens of thousands of Kurds. But there's a serious argument about whether you should call it genocide or whether what it was suppressing a nationalist rebellion, which may be bad, but it's different, and lots of people have done it, including Abraham Lincoln, that happened to be ethnically homogeneous. Okay? That's a serious argument.
I think you should...
Don't bring this up if it's what I think you're going to bring up.
You betcha. I was going to say you should take this up with Jeffrey Goldberg.
I asked you not to bring that up. But as long as you're bringing his name up, I would point out that he wrote this New Yorker piece asserting a link between Iraq and Al-Qaeda that has been largely forgotten. But it was a very influential piece, and didn't exactly discourage the invasion of Iraq, although it turned out to be pretty wildly misleading.
Jeffrey Goldberg is the pro-war supporter who got away with murder and hasn't had to apologize or, as far as I can see, pay any price for writing a series of articles.
Are you kidding? He's heavily recruited. He just went to the Atlantic from the New Yorker.
No, but he went to the Atlantic after the New Yorker, where he wasn't a huge success as their national political correspondent.
But they weren't trying to unload him, were they?
No. I'm sure he was sought after, and he's a great guy, and everybody loves him, and
Mickey, excuse me.
But
could we not wildly overgeneralize here?
Okay, but he wrote some things that, in retrospect, seem really, really wrong. That led the nation into war by playing on the emotions of the Holocaust, and he hasn't gotten any grief for it at all, as far as I can see.
No, you're right, and it was all the more powerful by being in the New Yorker, and hasn't exactly ruined his career. You're right.
The worst of them was in Slate, actually, but.
Well, was that the one about the gas or
aflatoxin?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's not like Andrew Sullivan, who's had to abjectly apologize on blogging heads.
No, plus Andrew didn't do nearly as much damage. Andrew didn't do nearly as much to get us into Iraq.
Only because he lacked the influence, yes.
I wouldn't say that. Well, didn't have that perfect New Yorker positioning, even
point.
The liberal New Yorker positioning.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we digress.
Okay, but I think I'm basically admitting that I've lost track of Iraq. It seems to be it's like 6 or 8 different wars in different areas.
Actually, I think the number of wars it is actually kind of dropping, right? Isn't that part of your case, that it is maybe drifting towards stability?
People say that the dynamic in every province is different.
Yeah.
And that's what Phil Carter said, actually, when he came back from Iraq a year ago, that you can't generalize it. And that seems to be the emerging conventional wisdom.
Okay.
Our commanders have to improvise on the ground, and one day maybe they'll knit it all together, but nobody seems to quite have any idea how that's going to happen.
Okay.
The one discordant note was this Washington Post reporter was killed taking photographs of a bombing in Baghdad, apparently by the Shiite militia who had infiltrated the police. He was a Sunni from Tikrit, and they claim that the Sunni Awakening Council, who are the great Sunnis who have thrown off Al-Qaeda, are really they're enemies within Baghdad who are conducting ethnic cleansing. So they're not falling for this Sunni Awakening stuff in Baghdad. And that was a very troubling story because it implied that basically all the tensions that we want to eliminate in Baghdad are still there, very close to the surface.
Yeah. Now, to cap off that, I think we left too much obscure in that genocide discussion. The point was the label genocide was used to depict Saddam Hussein as so unequivocally evil that you have no choice but to kill him and but to invade. That was the tenor of the rhetoric, and that's why the question of whether killing the Kurds was just really, really bad, A, or B, on par with the Holocaust, was an important debate, and supporters of the war wanted to say on par with the Holocaust, and I argued before the war that it wasn't, but...
Well, they were
and Jeffrey Goldberg wanted, I argued specifically with Jeffrey Goldberg, and he insisted, no, we use the same terminology, genocide.
Right, and he played on the never again Holocaust card for all it was worth.
Right.
And your point was that, no, Saddam was just a psychotic mass murderer, not necessarily a genocidal murderer on the order of Hitler.
Yeah, well, it was not, I think it was not on the, A, it was not on the order of Hitler, B, it had happened. It wasn't, never again means don't let it happen again. This had happened years ago. It wasn't like you could bring them back to life.
Well, right, but if Hitler was in power 20 years later, wouldn't we be justified in going and getting him for the concentration camps 20 years earlier?
Well, I think it's always good to punish people if it's, first of all, if they commit, they do what Hitler did, you would take any lengths to punish them. And it would be good to punish Saddam Hussein if it's practical. The question is what's practical. Anyway, we did punish him.
Yeah. You want to talk about our new Middle East Peace Initiative?
Yeah, this is, again, we're moving from an area about which I know nothing to an area about which I know nothing. And I'm equally committed to opining about both of them. I was just, Condi Rice went to the Middle East. The Bush administration is seriously trying to stir up a peace initiative and get a boss of the Palestinian side, or at least the West Bank part of the Palestinian side, and Olmert to, I guess, Annapolis. They want to have this conference.
Yes, in November.
And I just was thinking about this in a strictly game theoretical way, not knowing enough about the landscape of opinion in Israel to really do it, but wanting to do it anyway. And I figured maybe if our Israeli viewer, Conscious Cat, is watching, he could just step in and tell me where I'm going wrong. Because this is strict abstract game theory, okay?
Okay.
But here, first of all, is the reason it seems to me even more hopeless than usual at the moment, okay? It has to do with the fact that for the first time we've got a peace initiative at a time when Palestine is divided between a Fatah-ruled West Bank and a Hamas-ruled Gaza, okay?
Right.
Now, any deal that's worth doing with the Palestinians is going to involve giving some things up that at least a lot of Israelis are reluctant to give up. For starters, a lot of settlements in the West Bank, and moreover, probably parts of East Jerusalem. I think if it's a deal that the Palestinians are going to be enduringly satisfied with, that's really going to solve the problem, it's going to be a lot of East Jerusalem. And actually, Olmert, although he's fairly far to the right, actually broached the subject a couple of days ago of giving up parts of annexed, I think he was talking about parts of annexed East Jerusalem.
So what's not to like?
Well, fine so far, but if you're going to give up, first of all, I think they're going to have to give up more than the little outlying parts he was talking about if they really want the Palestinians, enough Palestinians to be happy with this for it to be worth doing. Because the thing about this deal is it's not like buying a car where, if you get the guy to sign off and you leave with a car, well, that's the deal, and if you got a good deal, it's a good deal.
Right.
This kind of deal is about more than reaching agreement with whoever the leader happens to be. It has to be the case that a lot of Palestinians feel they got a good deal so that the terrorism is not going to have a place to, get a foothold.
What's your game theory point?
What?
What's your game theory point?
Okay. That was kind of one, but not exactly.
Okay.
It's just that why would the Israelis, if any deal they do with is just going to be basically with the West Bank, as I understand it, right?
Right.
Because Fatah doesn't speak for Gaza. Why would they give up the things they're going to have to give up if what seems to be the main hotbed of terrorism right now, Gaza, is going to be, at least in the short term, unaffected by the deal and not quelled or anything? Right?
I guess the argument was that if in 5 years the Abbas has a thriving West Bank Palestinian state that's getting rich, that the Gazans might change their mind.
They might, and you actually hear about Hamas being ready to do some kind of deal involving, a long-term, a so-called hudna, which is the Islamic equivalent of an armistice for like a very long specified time, 10, 20 years. But I just don't see that working with the Israeli population. Basically, I mean, I just see their first reaction being the one I just spelled out. What are we getting for this? If Gaza's not going to be part of the deal.
That seems like a good point. I have no.
Okay, but then there's a second. Ironically, some people kind of this part I don't know about, but the other consideration, I don't know where I want to go with this. The other consideration is that is the so-called demographic question. You know what I mean by that, right?
You mean that the population bomb of
yeah, I mean,
Arabs,
if you add up the Arabs in the West Bank, Gaza, and in Jerusalem proper, you're close to having as many people as you have Israeli Jews. And the
right.
fear of a lot of Israelis is that, at any moment, if all the Palestinians just totally changed their strategy, gave up terrorism, and said, okay, look, you're right, you own the West Bank, you own Gaza, it's your land, we are no longer in occupied territory, now don't we get to vote? And if they pursued that goal peacefully and just did marches and so on, they would have massive international support. And what does Israel say then? And that's the fear. And I think that was really one of the motivations behind the unilateral Gaza withdrawal. It's like, okay, now if you guys do that, we can say, sorry, we already withdrew. Gaza's not ours. You guys, the Gazans aren't part of the demographic equation.
Well, and the wall. That's also what was behind the wall.
Well, but the wall is in anticipation. The wall was in anticipation of a classic two-state solution on terms territorially favorable to Israel in terms of where they put the wall. But the assumption was a unified. It was consistent with the assumption of a unified Palestinian people. A single Palestinian state on the other side of the wall. There's a difference between that and a kind of intention to divide the Palestinian people so that neither. So that there is no one group of Palestinian people that can constitute the demographic threat.
But I don't understand. Gaza was never really part of Israel, right?
Well, as long as Israel, well, it wasn't a big important part of kind of the historic aspirations of Israel. But as long as it was occupied territory, Israel was running it.
I mean, I guess I just am ignorant. Is Gaza on a par with the West Bank in terms of...
Not in terms of its place in Israel's, consciousness. And that's the other reason they were willing to cut it off. Anyway, I'm just saying, I'm trying to figure out whether it's possible that some people concerned about the demographic problem could favor a deal with the West Bank alone as some sort of way of cementing in that division between the two groups of Palestinians. But
if you cut a deal with the West Bank, then you've managed to exclude the West Bank Arabs from Israel anyway, so mission accomplished.
I guess that's true.
Doesn't matter if the Gazans go along or not.
Yeah, so there will be basically no discernible support for a deal unless it's coordinated. It's either coordinated with a separate deal with Hamas, or it comes after their unity is restored between the West Bank and Gaza. So I'm sorry, but I do not see the point of pursuing this. And as you know, I like peace initiatives generally, but this seems just more hopeless than usual.
It's worth exploring, isn't it? I mean, what's the harm? It keeps Condi Rice occupied for the next year and a half.
The classic... I applaud her whole attitude toward this. I really do. I think she's sincere. And I think she's broken out of the mindset that gripped the Bush administration on this issue for a long time. But the classic fear in a case like this is that when you get expectations up and things crash, bad things happen. I mean, the Second Intifada was blamed by a lot of people on the collapse of Camp David. I don't know if that's true. Look, it's fine. They can talk. It's okay. I'm just saying it seems more hopeless than usual.
It's hard to believe that hopes are wildly raised the way they were raised by Oslo.
Yeah, I was just trying to get clear on why it's more hopeless than usual.
Yeah, no, that does clarify it to me. Because the polls, I think, show that the Israeli public will make all those concessions if they really think it's going to bring peace. But... as you point out,
well, they'll make some. There are big questions about like how much of East Jerusalem they'll let go of, what you do about the Temple Mount, and so on. But they're certainly mostly willing to cut loose. I think by and large the settlements in the West Bank, although some of them are so big that
Is the younger generation more willing or less willing to make concessions?
I don't know.
I don't know either. That seems like an important point.
It does.
Okay.
Now, you wanted to talk about this Darwinian robots thing.
Well, there's an article we can link to it. It was a newspaper article about a study some Austrian scientists did where they tested a neurotic bot, a program that was programmed to behave neurotically in some sort of artificial intelligence game, and the neurotic bot beat the rational bots. And I know that, from reading your book, I know that, this sort of game playing plays an important role in the development of evolutionary psychology because it explains why we are basically predisposed to like people until they screw us, because that's the winning strategy in the prisoner's dilemma game. Tit for tat, I think it's called, or maybe even a little more nicer than tit for tat.
Tit for tat. The tit for tat rule is if somebody was nice to you on the last encounter, you're nice to them. If they tried to screw you, you try to screw them. Right. Initially, in computer simulations, that was a strategy that won these multiplayer games, and then subsequently, yes, something slightly nicer. In fact, I just had dinner with Robert Axelrod, who wrote the book The Evolution of Cooperation, last week. He explained to me, yes, something slightly nicer, and he sponsored these path-breaking computer tournaments.
Right. So when I went on Wikipedia and looked at the definition of neurotic, and Bob, it was like looking in a mirror.
Well, I was going to point that out.
So any game that shows that my mindset is superior in terms of Darwinian fitness, I'm all for.
Yeah, but. Here's the funny thing. Okay, the deal was there was some computer game. What is it? World of Warfare or something.
Something like that. It involves like marauding, Scandinavians or something like that. Yeah. But according to this article, when they
instilled what they call neurosis in some of the players, in some of the automated players in this game. The neurotic robot, it says, was more likely than the others to distort hard facts about resources and flip between extremes in behavior. I don't think that's what neurotic means to me and you. Neurotic just means more consistently anxious than the average person, right?
It means a little more than that if you judge from the Wikipedia entry, but I told it sort of means negative affect, prone to guilt and anxiety and depression, etc., etc.
Well, I think it's safe to say, we're just speaking between ourselves here, and we wouldn't say this in public, but I think it's safe to say that you and I both have a certain amount of neuroses.
I think I now realize that more than ever, yes.
I think it's possible that you have even more than I do, but I'd be interested in hearing your comment on that.
No, I don't deny that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because, you once claimed on Blogging Heads that most of our friends, most people who know both of us, think that I'm crazier than you are. Are you backing off of that, or are you talking psychosis now?
I'm certainly backing off of that.
Oh, good. Excellent.
I don't think it's true.
No, I think you said it.
I don't think you're sane, but I don't think our friends appreciate that. They don't know you as well as I do.
No, I think people think I'm a little crazy, but enough about me. I mean, certainly anxiety is with us all because it was adaptive. It gets you to pay attention to potentially threatening things. Neuroses is kind of that, ratcheted up, and assuming, I guess, some particular forms, as you laid out.
But what I wanted to know is what's the mechanism by which these neuroses, express themselves in this game? Is it that the neurotics have these wild mood swings so that they retreat and then suddenly attack and it throws off the plotting, rational Scandinavians so they're destroyed? Or, why is neurotic behavior better for survival? That's what I didn't quite understand. I understand why, in the basic Darwinian sense, that if you distort reality so that you're always right or that things are going to go well, that you will tend to win rather than be completely rational. But But beyond that, I don't quite understand.
Well, I couldn't open the PDF file about the game, but
the PDF file told you nothing that the newspaper story didn't already
Did your Wikipedia definition include mood swings as part of neuroses? I don't think of that as necessarily associated.
Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong then.
But anyway...
mood swings was definitely like a subcategory.
Yeah, well, I was trying to figure out why they were saying a tendency to distort hard facts about resources was associated with neuroses, because really... It seems to me that the distortion of facts is not what neuroses is about. It's about choosing a different place in the risk aversion spectrum, right? It's like, if a normally anxious person locks the door and the windows on the first floor every night, and the neurotic, locks the windows on the second floor every night, well, there's no dispute about the facts. There's just a difference in terms of how much they dislike the idea of, unless there's no chance at all that someone will break into the second floor. But it seems to me it's more like just a different preference on risk. How much it's worth insulating, how much it's worth to insulate yourself against risk, right?
But it's weird because this story implied that the neurotics take more risk, and you're saying that they would take less risk because they're more keenly aware of the risk. I just think I was hoping you would know the answer for why neurotic bots win.
Well, no, except to know that why classic anxiety is clearly adaptive. You worry about your kids who have your genes in them. You worry about people disliking you because that was correlated with not getting your genes in them. Normal anxiety is perfectly explicable as an adaptation. Now, what happens in the modern environment is you get anxiety disorder, apparently because the modern environment is so different from the environment natural selection designed us for, a hunter-gatherer environment, right? So, you for example, you might see all of these school shootings on TV, and, in a hunter-gatherer environment, if you witnessed a lot of violence, it would mean you were in a threatening environment. You would be right to be anxious.
Right.
But in a modern environment, you're not. I can say that much, but nothing interesting, if that's what you were hoping for.
That's semi-interesting. It explains a little bit of my behavior.
Well, you, I don't know. You want to talk about you per se?
No, like there's a horrible car crash on PCH where an SUV veered out of control and smashed into an infinity and killed the director of Porky's, the Porky's movies.
When was this?
It was about a month ago.
And this haunted you?
Well, now when I think about buying a car, I want to buy a car that will survive that crash, even though the crash is like a 1 in a million shot. And there are not many cars that would survive that crash. An SUV careening at you at 50 miles an hour is pretty much going to kill you in most cars.
Well, that's actually a good example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That actually didn't happen on your street, you know? It just came to your attention because of the way the media work.
Yeah, although it's not that far away. I drive PCH.
Well, no, but the other thing, it's really not a distance question per se. It's how large a pool of data was that extracted from in order to show it to you, right?
A very, very large pool of data.
Right. I mean,
yes, it's irrational to some extent, but that's why I think it demonstrates your point.
Yeah. And I will refrain from getting on the hobby horse about how we've got to start thinking about terrorism in more rational terms and not, notwithstanding the tendency of all Republican presidential candidates to exaggerate the threat and get us to go crazy.
So we're approaching actually something useful. You're saying that neurotic behavior may win in the bot game, but is a very bad response to terror.
Yeah, I would say exaggerated anxieties is a particularly bad way to respond to terror. And I would like to see some presidential candidate just try this out. Just say, hey, we've got to be strong. Just define strength as not being afraid.
So it's not only the desire for retribution that's built into our genes that serves us badly in the war on terror. It's also this neurotic, exaggerated fear of low risk, low percentage, horrible events.
Yeah, I mean totally. 9/11
that also is probably built into our genes if this robot game is true.
Well, I don't know the details of the robot game, but yes, I'm saying the tendency in our genes combined with the way the modern media work leads us all to exaggerate threats.
But actually, if the robot game is right, it's not that we're fish out of water and we're not in the environment of evolution anymore. It's neuroses would have served us in the environment of evolution too.
Some degree of anxiety, yeah, but some anxiety is definitely functional even in a modern environment. But
it's more that the environment of terrorism is not the environment of our evolution.
Well, there's two things. There's that the media exaggerate the amount of threat actually out there, A, and ratchet up our anxiety. B, the more anxious we are, the more likely we are to strike out. And I maintain there's something about the war on terror that often makes it particularly ill-advised to strike out unreflectively without really thinking. Sometimes, yes, it makes sense to attack. Sometimes it doesn't. So it's two separate things.
Right. I do think Al Gore would be the man to resist that impulse.
Right on.
So we've come full circle.
We've come full circle. Now, I got to briefly do some housekeeping, okay?
Okay.
First of all, nothing is certain in this crazy world of technology, but there's at least a 50-50 chance that when people see this, we will be in Flash, in the Flash format. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to convert to Flash today.
And why is that good?
It's good because it means many fewer people with Macs in particular will come to our site and find it hard to see us, have technical difficulties. Now they can download Real and see us, but it's a pain. B, I think everyone will be able to click the Dinglink button and create Dinglinks, okay, which now Firefox needs a plug-in to do it, and Macs can't do it at all. And C, it's kind of just what everybody does. Now, this isn't to say that the redesign has been done. We will still have our, homespun look. And in fact, the toolbar below us on the video box, if we have converted to Flash by now, will have a particularly ragged look. And that's because since we are moving to the redesign within really maybe like 2 weeks, that's a temporary issue, and we didn't feel a need to devote huge resources. But anyway, we hope we're in Flash. Oh, the downside is only 2 speeds, 1 and 1.4. Sorry.
1.4. I would have lobbied for 1.3.
Well, you know, it's hard to please everybody.
I know. So
and
so
influential commenters like Blog and Noggin were lobbying for 1.5.
So that's it for housekeeping?
No.
Oh, okay.
You want to leave, don't you?
No.
Should I take that the wrong way? Just quickly, I want to laud some commenters. I want to read this thing from our comment nanny. Where is that? I got an email from the comments nanny today.
Yeah.
She writes, well, first of all, let me say that, since I may not be able to find what she wrote, let me say that I meant to compliment our commenters, because a couple of times recently there have been discussions about Israel where a variety of views were represented, and the comments did not dissolve into mutual name-calling, and that is rare indeed on the blogosphere, wouldn't you say?
Especially on that topic. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should pat ourselves on the back for that.
Okay.
Now, if I could just find the comment nanny's lauding of our commenters. Oh, here it is. She wrote me an email. She says, I'd just like to say that I've been very impressed this last week or so by the high level of discourse among the dialogues commenters, i.e. the commenters on dialogues, and by the conspicuous lack of sniping and personal remarks. People seem to be hitting a good stride of rigorous involvement. I am also glad that they like to self-police. It's like they know what works, and name-calling doesn't work, wastes time, and is distracting. They've developed a pretty healthy commenter's consciousness. Now, Mickey, whenever somebody says you've got a good commenter's consciousness, you should beam with pride. But when the comments nanny says it, I mean, you should just go luminous.
I share your pride. I'm sharing your joy right now.
Okay. I just quickly want to say, finally, dingalinks. A lot of good dingalinks lately. And this matters because, you know, in the new design there will be this special section for dingalinks that came from the comments section that have particular viral potential. Conscious Cat, Magic Flea, a new commenter. Nice dingalink magic. Pacivorous, Twin Swords, Jim 3Ch. And then Joe Cairo, the trifecta. I mean, well, he did 3 good dingalinks, and Mickey, one of them went quasi-viral. You know, you alluded earlier to my rant last time about the Iraq War. He linked to it, he did a dingalink to it prominently. It was the top comment. And then I think, not coincidentally, that dingalink, a dingalink with the exact same specification, showed up on an actual blog called Instaputs, not to be confused with Instapundit, has a rather different ideological view. And what Instaputs said was, just watch the first minute of this clip. Wright tears into Kaus's argument with such dexterity that, just for a moment, I was grateful for the existence of Mickey Kaus.
Well, except you weren't tearing into my argument, you were tearing into an argument I wasn't making, but you did it very well.
In any event, we applaud Joel Cairo, and also I wanted to say I want to give out one of our Lifetime Achievement Awards to KJ.
Okay.
Because, you know, remember back in the day he used to send in these emails, and now he's been kind of quietly commenting, never asking for glory, but they've added up. He's got over 600 comments. That's not the kind of thing he would ever point out himself. He's not that kind of guy, but I think he deserves a shout-out.
Well, he's got it.
Not quite yet, buddy. One quick pop culture quiz from our comments section, okay?
Okay.
You think you're the king of pop culture?
In this company, like between you and me, yeah.
Oh, well, let's see, okay? Let's see.
You didn't even know what Viagra was for.
Maybe that's because I don't need it, buddy.
I think you win that exchange.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Speaking of which, you know, well, never mind. I was gonna denigrate your moose, but I don't want to do that. I just want to say
my moose has suffered enough trauma.
Yeah,
You know, in the past week, it's been a difficult week,
so to speak.
It's been a difficult week for her.
Sorry. Never mind. I think only I know what I meant anyway. But
I'm not so sure about that. Go ahead. Anyway, you're about to say something.
Joel Cairo. Again. Here's what had happened. The commenter Happy Hominid. This was after the much, you know, I mean, there's two kinds of people. The kinds of people who think David Frum shouldn't be on the site, and the kind who think that Al Jazeera guy shouldn't be on the site, and they're never the same people. Okay. Happy Hominid was one of the Frum skeptics. He He says, the only positive I can take from this is that talking heads, he meant blogging heads, he capitalized talking heads, is a place where anyone can get a forum. Then again, people like Frum have had all the forums they cared to handle, and so on. Joel Cairo quotes that and responds with only this, in quotes, "This must be the place indeed." This must be the place is capitalized. Do you get that allusion, Mickey?
This must be the place?
Yeah.
I don't think so. No, I don't.
I got it right away. I'll give you a hint. Happy Hamid had called blogging heads talking heads by mistake, capitalized it. Joel Cairo capitalizes, "This must be the place."
Is it like some pirate movie?
No, man. You are treading water here. What do you...
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the rock group Talking Heads?
Did they have a song called "This Must Be the Place"?
No, and I knew that too, actually. I knew that although this song is commonly called that because that lyric is prominent, actually the song is called Naive Melody. And I swear I didn't need Google, I didn't need anything. That's just a fact about pop culture I knew, and I thought, I bet Mickey doesn't know that. And with that, Mickey, I'd like to bring this dialogue to a close.
A rare victory for you. That's fine. Quit while you're ahead. Go ahead. See if I care.
Okay, I'm going to do that. Is that all right?
I'm just going to go back to doing what I do best.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
See you later.
It's been real, and I hope we're in Flash.
So do I.
Oh, okay. See you around.
See you later.